Repatriated Private Teddy Bear. Teddy was with the 6th Infantry in Germany until the CO decided he'd grown a little too big.
Your forest is nothing.
Nothing for anybody.
You have so many reasons to protect your forests. Remember, only you can prevent forest fires.
Plain chocolate Santa.
And I'm a roasted peanut.
And he's the M&M's Candies Man.
Who dunks M&M?
His worm away, getting off the floor.
This is after a big Etuan Moore game winner, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
Sometimes.
Every video on this channel, we talk about coaches, players, GMs, others on the team, and the executive office. But what about the other important people on the team? When you watch a game, you come for entertainment. And there's someone or something on the team that contributes to that, just like the players. The mascots. What's the story behind these mascots? How did they come to be in sports and the NBA and evolved with the league? And how did they help shape entertainment? And more importantly, become moneymakers?
There is usually some sort of symbolism attached to various kinds of animals. For example, hippos symbolize fertility, crocodiles symbolize power, and various different gods in the polytheistic ancient Egyptian religion were seen as depicted with an animal head on top of a human body.
So where exactly did mascots come from? Did one day some executive say, you know what would really sell tickets? Dressing someone up like a panda. Well, according to New York Daily and several other sources, the word mascot originates from the French word mascot with 2 T's and an E, which meant the English equivalent of a lucky charm or talisman. This itself also derives from another French word, mascato, meaning witch, fairy, or sorcerer. So the word mascot was seen as a sorcerer's charm. I also have a large French viewership base, so shout out to you guys for where this term came from. Because of the derivative of this word, the goal of mascots was originally to bring luck to teams, clubs, or social gatherings. While part of that may still hold true with trying to encourage the fans and teams to win, we'll dive in later to how the goal of mascots has sort of changed over the years. There is a bit of a debate on where exactly the first mascot came from, and that's partly because it depends on where you really draw the line of a mascot. A few articles credit it all the way back to the very first records of mankind. Yeah, can you believe that? Along with inventing the wheel, fire, and pointy rocks, we already had competitions, cheerleaders, and weird fur costumes to cheer on sports.
One of them just learned how to grab stuff and walk. No, like walk like that and grab stuff at the same time and bang rocks together to make pointed rocks. Ouch. And set things on fire. Youch. And make crazy sounds with their voice, which can mean different things.
That's a human person.
And now they're everywhere.
Well, not exactly. Totems. Totems is what I'm referring to. Because of the whole luck factor tied to the original meaning, many tie totems as a foundation for what mascots would become, as totems would resemble animals that humans hoped to hunt and bring more bountiful rewards. New York Daily reads, evidence shows that these portraits were often worshipped and celebrated. This was particularly true during times of harvest and hunting. People would dress up like animals or those on totem poles to inspire goodwill for them. They considered that this would help in thriving hunts and abundant harvest. Also, early cultures would dress up in masks or animal-like figures for purposes of fertility. Many would hop in the mascot-like costume to bring about fertility for the people in their village or tribe. This further trickled down and split into more diverse practices as well. For example, the practice of ancient Egyptians worshipping certain animal figures is also cited as a possible root of this sport practice, as the Egyptians believed it was the gods and deities themselves taking that form, as well as many other symbolisms of animals alongside it. Fast forward several centuries, all the way from the 3100s BC to 1800s AD, and we start to see the first use of what we would traditionally think of mascots. Now, what I'm going to say next isn't exactly PG, so be warned. But according to articles, the argued first use of the word mascot with 2 T's and an E again, and the popularization of it, came once again from a French play in the 1880s, where Edwin Adron wrote an opera play called La Mascotte, where again, not PG, but an Italian farmer was visited by a mysterious virgin named Bettina when his crops were failing, and as long as she remained a virgin, was a good luck charm and helped his crops stay bountiful. Even though the word still relatively remained only a slang term amongst French gangsters, these plays and other depictions of personified good luck charms helped spread the word, before it was finally introduced as mascot with 1 T and no E's in the English language in 1881, where it was carried to the rest of the Western world and finally made its way into sports as well.
Another GI repatriated, Private Teddy Bear. Teddy was with the 6th Infantry in Germany until the CO decided he'd grown a little too big and strong to run around loose. So Teddy got his honorable discharge and a ticket stateside. He made the voyage in fine style, a good sailor.
Again, many argue who the first sports mascot is, because it depends on if you count just the costume. Around the exact time the word was officially in the English language, baseball would have the first mascot. However, it would still be a while before these big suits came out. But in 1883, just 2 years after it entered the English language, the Dixon Baseball Dictionary officially listed the word and listed a boy called Chick as the first mascot. He was also sort of the equipment manager tied into it, fetching balls and bats for the team, and teams believed that whoever treated him well did better, with good luck and karma. It's unclear if a specific team used him more for good luck or not, so it wasn't really tied to one team, as many articles reference the word teams plural many times. So it seemed to be a whole league-wide ordeal, unlike specific team mascots today. So sorry to any baseball fans watching, as none of the 16 teams when the MLB was only 12 years old can take the full credit for the very first mascot. However, a year later, in 1884, a goat was wandering the field in Cincinnati. And I don't mean greatest of all time, I mean an actual goat. Officials and others who weren't fans suspected that the goat was just hungry and trotting the field looking for old balls, tin cans, or whatever else it could eat. But other people noticed that people couldn't take their eyes off of it, and joked that it should be the next mascot. Later that same year, in 1884, Sporting Life talked about Boston having a mascot as well, with the Boston Browns in 1886 calling him Little Nick, claiming him the luckiest man in the country and certainly the Browns mascot. In 1886, that same year, it really started to explode with teams clamoring to have a mascot, most of which were little kids, basically doing the equivalent to SJ in Blindside.
What's in it for me?
SJ, I'm gonna get you a hog hat and the whole family a hog hat.
Are you telling me that's the best you can do?
SJ, you remind me of me as a boy.
Coach, help me help you.
I should give you a Gamecock headdress and with real feathers.
And for you, SJ, this is what I can do. At Ole Miss, we have the Grove by the stadium. We walk it before every game in front of thousands of people. It's a sacred ritual, and I'm in front.
Seen it 1,000 times.
Ever seen it from the front of the line? Next year, you and me lead the team.
Tennessee offered to let me run on the field and flip the coin.
As the years went on in the 1890s, teams started to shift more towards actual animals, starting with the St. Louis Browns having the World Beaters in 1888, which once again featured a kid, but also 2 dogs, making the 3 a group entity as the mascot. In 1892, the first only animal mascot made its appearance with Handsome Dan as a bulldog mascot for Yale in football, being actually part of the class of 1892. His history is so remarkable that the mascot still holds today, and there's a hot dog named after him at Shake Shack. Just 2 years after that, against that same Yale team, Harvard decided that they needed to up the ante and one-up Yale, and brought a live bear cub onto the field that they deemed their teddy bear mascot, which was surprisingly a decade before Teddy Roosevelt and his teddy bear escapades with the stuffed animals became popular. Mascot Store, a website specializing specifically in mascots and their history, writes, "In the early 20th century, live animal mascots were still popular at all sporting events, with teams such as the Chicago Cubs and the Boston Red Sox using live bears, lions, and elephants to represent their teams. However, as animal rights concerns began to rise, live animal mascots were phased out in favor of costume mascots. Due to the fall of traveling shows and carnivals because of the animal treatment and animal rights, decades later, around the 1930s to 1940s, was when the first quote-unquote professional mascot came to be, i.e. something that was not animal nor child, with Max Patkin known as the Clown Prince of Baseball. According to reports, he was actually the pitcher for the Chicago White Sox, a minor league team, and also played exhibitionist games in the Navy during World War II.
Towel! Give me a towel.
However, the shenanigans started when Patkin pitched a home run to Yankee Joe DiMaggio, in which Patkin followed DiMaggio around the bases mocking his run and acting goofy. The fans and the team loved it, and he continued the goofy attitude for 50 years, being a boost of morale for the team and fans and bringing lighthearted and wholesome entertainment to crowds and kids, with his baggy uniform and sideways hat, giving him the nickname. But still, he was a professional player, and not necessarily hired for being a mascot in a costume. So when exactly did that start? Well, in order to discuss that, we'll first have to get into the other topic.
I'm an M&M's plain chocolate Santa.
And I'm a roasted peanut.
And he's the M&M's Candies Man.
Who dunks M&M's?
Who dunks M&M's?
In chocolate, take a guess.
In chocolate, can you guess?
Who covers them in
What's just as important to a team, if not more so, than winning a championship? It's making money. This is the goal of mascots everywhere, not just in sports. In 1877, the first brand mascot was created, the Quaker Oats Man, and later, in 1890, Aunt Jemima. 1898, the Michelin Man, and there were many more that came shortly after. But still, it wasn't necessarily a trend. But much is the point of studying history, many small things can ripple into something larger. Or in this case, it was the other way around. Something very large rippling into something small.
Snafu. Situation normal. All fouled up.
The Great War caused many small and large effects that forever changed the world that we know. Aside from just technology and warfare, something else changed that not many people talk about. Advertising. With a war of this scale, several nations needed to advertise their war efforts and get people to enlist or help in their cause, leading to an advertisement boom, creating many caricatures, animals, and other mascots, leading to one of the largest advertising campaigns ever. The United States themselves contracted some of the best and well-known illustrators with one purpose: turn the nation to the war effort. This, of course, was even furthered at an even larger scale in the Second World War from both sides. But this trickled down to the rest of society, as do most things. While the government was advertising for the country, companies needed to advertise for themselves to boost the economy, especially when things like the Great Depression crashed it. Companies hopped on this trend and started creating icons and mixing it with their logos to humanize their brand and sell more, with one of the first largest being the Molten Salt Girl in 1914, followed shortly by the Sun-Made Raisins in 1915, Mr. Peanut in 1916, and it snowballed further and further and further, leading to the Jolly Green Giant in 1928, the Rice Krispie Brothers later that same year, the Gerber Baby, Borden Cow, Smokey the Bear, Elmer Bull, and so on and so on and so on and so on. And you can imagine how successful this campaign was, given that every single one I just listed is still in use today, nearly 100 years later, if not already over 100 years later. As time went on, it only got worse, as two other major events would push this even further: the invention of television and the Cold War. With the invention of television, of course, more eyes were exposed to these advertisements, and people were able to animate these mascots and logos. And with the Cold War, the massive battle between capitalism and communism led to even more advertisements and incentives for companies, leading to an absolute epidemic of mascots and personified logos in the 1950s and 1960s. Mascots began to become intertwined with other things like cartoons, fun, and simple whimsy, leading to things like the Trix Rabbit, Lucky Charms, Captain Crunch, Frosted Flakes Tony the Tiger, Mr. Clean, Colonel Sanders, Pillsbury Doughboy, and even the infamous Ronald McDonald and McDonald mascots, as well as the M&Ms. It only continued to travel further across the world, with Japan creating Hello Kitty in 1974 and having millions of animal mascots as well, including Beijing even making the Fuya for the 2008 Olympics. Lebrand goes on to depict this trend, saying, "In the fast-moving consumer goods market, brand mascots play a pivotal role in showcasing product benefits and fostering consumer connections. Advertising a product becomes challenging without a charismatic spokesperson, making brand mascots invaluable proxies for presenting brand values and personality. These mascots go beyond merely highlighting product features. They create an emotional bond between consumers and the brand. In today's commoditized market, relying solely on the product's merits may not guarantee success. Humans are visual communicators, and well-crafted mascots can enhance engagement and communication across various platforms." Take M&Ms as an example. The M&Ms were created by Forrest Mars, one of the iconic forces behind the Mars Company empire, as a duplicate of the British candy Smarties. M&Ms were invented right before the Second World War and was a US Army exclusive good. After the war, they went back on the private market. As a move to push the product into the mainstream, they decided to add faces to their chocolate. One for red M&M, representing the milk chocolate kind, and one for yellow M&M, the peanut chocolate kind. Now I know that was long, made up a lot of jargon, and contained a lot of vocab mainly used for business people. But basically, that boils down to simply saying your product is good is not enough anymore. It needs some sort of face attached to it that people can connect to say that it's good and have personality behind it. If your brand wants to represent something like kindness, they need a mascot that also represents kindness. Mascot Store continues to this, adding, "The Industrial Revolution of the 19th century brought about a new era of mascots, as businesses began to use them as branding tools. Companies began to create logos and mascots that represented their products and services, and these mascots were used to advertise and promote their businesses. As mass production and mass communication became more prevalent, mascots played an increasingly important role in consumer culture. As sports became more commercialized and official, again especially with the invention of TV, more sports leagues began to take this approach as well, knowing that excitement would bring more views, which meant more money for these leagues that were now essentially companies. Once again, it started off with baseball, with Mr. Met and Brutus Buckeye in 1964 and 1965. And it wouldn't take long before the NBA got involved as well, with the amazed and famous Benny the Bull taking center stage in his 1969 debut. Baseball continued to up the ante with the San Diego Chicken. The San Diego Chicken was so big and so popular that many articles depict it as the very first costume mascot. But as we just discussed, there were some predecessors. Mascot Sport writes, "In the 20th century, mascots became an integral part of sports culture. Professional sports teams began to adapt mascots as symbols of their teams, and these mascots were used to entertain fans and build team spirit. Mascots such as Philly Fanatic, the San Diego Chicken, and the Racing Sausages have become cultural icons in their own right, and are beloved by fans all over the world. As time went on, more and more were added, and the goal shifted more from bringing luck more to entertainment and commerce, with all that sport listing the duties of a mascot as the following: fan engagement, brand recognition, fan loyalty, and game atmosphere. And many other sources have similar ideals with simply just a small change in wording.
And he's perfect. He doesn't get onto the court, doesn't break any sort of rules. And then in another form of flip, his worm away, getting off the floor.
This is after a big Each One More game winner, if I'm not mistaken. Oh. Sometimes you just gotta warm it up.
As the trend and commercialization of mascots increased, teams and brands continued to up the entertainment. On top of that, technology only increased as well, leading to more commercials and more ways to advertise. To keep this exciting, brands began to expand past simply someone in a costume or a name to their character. Logos and spokes characters began to even further become their own people and play more into people's suspension of disbelief.
Or you leave them out in the sun, they get all brown, start sprouting little white hairs. No! Layers! Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers? You get it. We both have layers.
LeBron describes this phenomenon with M&M's history once again. Adding human characteristics through mascots breathes life to your brand. Having a story or a narrative to your mascots engages the audience and makes more of a profound connection. This can be applied for any products. By the late 90s, M&M's sales began to flatline. As more snack and candy alternatives continued to flood the market, competition became harsh. Mars decided to hire the brand consultancy to help rejuvenate the M&M's brand. Their idea was simple yet ingenious. Give these candies a distinct personality. Red was sarcastic and cynical. Yellow was laid back and gullible. The duo appeared everywhere on TV, internet, and now often appear on Super Bowl advertisements. Each advertisement is often accompanied by a celebrity and showcase these characters' daily, funny, and weird life. These characters have such likable and relatable personalities that made them connect with the audience, even the adults. This marketing more revived the brand and made it so popular that they now have M&M's museums called M&M's World. In these flagship stores, we see more of these spokes candies displayed around than the actual M&M's products. Again, this led its way to more personality and making the characters real. Hence why starting in the 1960s, Disney mascots were not permitted to take off their costume or speak as long as they were working. And again, these lines began to merge with public brands and sports, as sports mascots were starting to take on that simple tool as well. As stated, the mascots began to become people themselves, each having their own backstories, personalities, and in some cases even canon families, with Mr. Met having Mrs. Met and kids. They began their own branding, which in turn built the brand of whatever team they represented, while still at the heart of it all being entertaining, which meant things like halftime shows, contests, performances, and biggest of all, stunts. Mascots are now recognized as entertainers and artists with features that now make it an art form. They have come to be an expression of what the team is and may correspond to the team's location or some other dominant characteristic that makes the club unique. Efficient mascots do not learn their stage behavior in a school. Having the capacity and ability to become one with the character and display this through physical activity is essential to being a realistic mascot. The individual must be able to put their personality aside and get into the role. Mascot Store continues adding, the 21st century has seen a continued evolution in sports and branding. With the rise of technology, mascots have become more interactive and able to engage with audiences in new ways. Some mascots now have their own social media accounts and can be seen participating in online challenges and viral campaigns. Additionally, the use of virtual and augmented reality technology has allowed for the creation of digital mascots that can be used in a variety of ways, such as in video games and virtual events. In sports, mascots have become more dynamic and athletic, engaging in acrobatic and gymnastic performances and stunts. Mascot performers are now trained to perform stunts and tricks, making their performances more engaging and entertaining. In branding, mascots have become a more integral part of the overall brand strategy. They are used to create emotional connections with consumers and promote brand values, creating memorable experiences. Companies now have the ability to develop mascots that have specific characteristics such as being friendly, adventurous, or even edgy that align with their brand values. However, as things got more and more adventurous, that also meant more and more dangerous, all while trying to keep people on the edge of their seat, leading to massive injuries such as sportscasting reporting. In either case, the job can be hazardous and result in injuries, sometimes serious. Some mascots have included Raptor, the Toronto mascot, rupturing his Achilles tendon performing a stunt, Muddy the Mud Hen suffering a concussion and sprained arm, as well as Mariner Moose sustaining a compound ankle fracture. In other words, being a mascot, while it may look fun, comes with its hazards, and unfortunately mascots sometimes pay a heavy price. Because of that performance price, some organizations pay a pretty penny to entertain the masses. With all those things, mascots become huge assets, being nearly as essential to the team as their superstar talent, with Rocky the Nuggets mascot making almost $700K a year. In this day and age, even as adults, sometimes we don't even begin to think of the person behind the costume. We think of just the character as its own entity, and it's that way by design. But even still, the mascots, nay, the people themselves, deserve a massive round of applause for keeping sports afloat and putting themselves in harm's way for the sake of making things interesting. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. My longer in-depth and history videos seem to always do better, and so I tried to organize it in a more fun and engaging way. I tried to focus this video more on the history of mascots broadly, but if you want a video diving into the history of specific mascots, such as the history of each NBA team's mascot itself, such as the Houston Bear or the Dragon from the Magic or the Spurs Coyote, then let me know. We just hit 8K subs, and I'm trying to hit 15K by the end of the year. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys hit that like and subscribe, as well as share the video around, or just simply comment for the algorithm. All that good stuff. It really does help me out. You guys have shown me crazy support lately, and I really, really do appreciate it. So with all that being said, I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out.
This is not okay. This needs to stop now.